I'm in the Forbidden City right now, which is the very center of Beijing, and it was built as the palace for the emperors to live in from the Ming and Qing dynasties. It was started in the early 1400s, so it's been in this place for about 600 years, and for 500 of that, the common people were not allowed in the wall at all. That's why it's the Forbidden City. No one could come in, so it was really only in the last century when normal people even had any idea of what was behind the walls here in the center of Beijing. My expectations of the Forbidden City were met by the central courtyards. I'd seen footage in different movies of a huge sweeping courtyard with a large staircase, and there'd be the emperor on top, very imposing figure. And so coming in through the gates, that was the exact feeling that I felt. The main plazas and courtyards of the city are amazingly imposing. You can definitely tell that the emperor wanted them to be intimidating. I can imagine people feeling even more and more humble and small as they come in. It's an amazing use of space and architecture to convey an imperial theme. I think there are almost 9,000 rooms in the city and about 800 different buildings. So I imagine the architects are busy all the time. It feels very separate from Beijing. You'd have no reason to think that there was a city outside of here. I think that you'd feel very focused in on this city and wouldn't even contemplate what was going on outside.
It's undergoing restoration right now, but a lot of it's very intact and very original. There's many different themes and many different layers, staircases that symmetrically come off kind of a main thoroughfare and go down through levels that look like they're mimicking a riverbank. When the city was being built, the stones were quarried far away, and they had to bring them all the way here to Beijing, which I found out today means northern capital. The stone pieces are just massive, so they had to have a way to get them here. And I guess it stumped them for a while, but then in the end they waited until the ground froze at winter and slid these giant pieces across the ice all the way into the city and then arranged them in this amazing palace. There are all these large brass urns placed around to combat fire, which I guess is a major concern in a place like this, just because it is relatively inaccessible. So if there were to be a fire or some kind of act of God that threatened to destroy it, they have to be pretty self-sufficient here. Once again, I think it speaks to the duality of the society. You know, outside is the kind of the commoners and the peasants, and in here it's just like segregated royalty. I mean, just opulent and just amazing.
The architects here have a great balance between incredibly ornate portions of the buildings and then some very simple building. The walls are pretty smooth and basic, but when you look up at the roofs, there are shiny gold tiles, there are ceramic dragons on every eave and the top of all the roofs looking down at you, and then underwards there's incredible carvings, painted carvings in greens and blues and gold.
It's a very balanced structure. The lines are very clean and geometric, all on proportion, and everything integrates very nicely with the surrounding hillsides and terrains. When you look out, you just see these walls and sloping roof lines, and just everything integrates into the valley that Beijing is in.
Well, we saw Starbucks from the top of the stairs.
And we ran all the way over as fast as we could.
It is a little silly to be going to Starbucks, but the idea of ice cubes was really appealing. It's very hot out here. There's not a lot of shade. It's all open plazas, so it was appealing, and it's reasonably tasteful for a Starbucks. There's just a little sign on the window, but it's kind of tucked away in the corner. So
and they gave us a map.
Yeah?
All the Starbucks locations across Beijing. I think having a Starbucks here really shows the kind of marketplace economy that's developing in China. The fact that it's within sight of where the emperor used to change his clothes before big weddings. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Each chamber has a different kind of yin-yang balance quote that's about a different aspect of life. And I wrote a few of them down. One of them speaks about the way of heaven and how it's profound and mysterious and life is difficult. But if we follow our plans and doctrines, that eventually we'll make it through onto the next passage. Another one is maintaining harmony and balance brings prosperity and peace on earth. And I'm sure he just had time to sit in these wonderful gardens and reflect all day and really look over his subjects and empire and think about what he was ruling and how he was going to go about his process. So these quotes, I mean, they really speak of an ancient wisdom, something that was developed here over generations of emperors and passed down and refined. That speaks to me. I'm really a student of kind of Eastern philosophy. I think it's very interesting, especially coming from the Western world, where our philosophy is way more intellectual. I mean, this is a very give and take, you know, balance, nature, understanding, less numbers and mathematics and logic and things like that, and just more advice for living, more overall principles that, I mean, you can apply in your daily life. You know, I mean, these are things that were valid 500 years ago, and a lot of them are still valid today.
They're like scary or regal? I don't know. The mask is made for someone with a smaller nose than I have, but it is based on a traditional Beijing opera makeup pattern, so I don't know what the story is behind it, though. I'm going to have to do some research and find out. The colors indicate things about the character that it gives hints to the audience about the character, the nature of the character. Anyway, tonight you might see some bags under my eyes. We are out enjoying the town and seeing a little Beijing opera like city people do.
So we're at the Beijing Opera House tonight, and as you can see, I'm fully dressed up for it. We're watching the actors and actresses get prepared. Very intense, beautiful makeup. It's a beautiful setting, very ornate and old. Kind of liking this. I'm gonna take this home. You might see me in this for the rest of the trip. It kind of beats my Great Wall hat.
They probably don't actually go together, but
It was fun. It's more like dinner theater, cabaret, than a formal Western opera. It's done in a smaller theater, and there are actually tables you can have tea and snacks while you're watching. And there's some elements of humor and a ton of action. Apparently it started in 1790 when some traveling opera groups arrived in Beijing and performed, and I think the emperor was really impressed and they stayed on, and a particular art form particular to Beijing developed. It has all kinds of symbolism, and I think in the makeup, the clothing, and the gestures, miming that's done, even things like eye movements. But there's also some good humor and things that you could relate to. That's entertaining and not that heavy. The train ride tomorrow is probably also going to be interesting.
When you're traveling, you should definitely look something like this. This is travel chic. This is day pack, backpack, bottles of water. Man, if you don't look like a mule, you're not doing it right, okay? You gotta be packed up.